The text arrived at exactly 4:47 in the morning. I know the precise time because I had been tracking every irregularity in Marcus's behavior for the past 6 weeks, and unusual phone activity between 4 and 5 a.m. had become a pattern. The message wasn't from Marcus's number. It was from a number I recognized immediately because it was saved in my own phone under Jessica Reeves, Marcus's CEO. But the message appeared on the screen of Marcus's phone, which he had left charging on the kitchen counter when he went to shower. The preview was enough to make my blood run cold, though my hands remained perfectly steady as I picked up the device. "He's closing our deal tonight." "Our deal? You're out." 5 words that confirmed everything I had suspected. 5 words that showed an arrogance so breathtaking it almost made me laugh. I took a screenshot, sent it to myself, and carefully placed Marcus's phone back exactly where he had left it. Then I went to my laptop and typed a reply from my own phone. "Conference room. Tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. All of us." I didn't expect what happened next, but perhaps I should have. 23 minutes after I sent that message, my doorbell rang. It was 5 to 10 in the morning. Marcus was still in the shower. I looked through the peephole and felt something cold and clarifying settle over me. Jessica Reeves stood on my doorstep in a designer dress that had clearly been slept in. Behind her were 2 men. One was Marcus, barefoot, wearing jeans he must have pulled on in a hurry. His face was the color of old newspaper. The other was David Chen, Marcus's best friend and co-founder of their company. David was also married. His wife Emma was 7 months pregnant with their first child. I opened the door. Jessica's smile could have cut glass. "Sarah, we need to talk about realistic expectations." I stepped aside. "Come in. I'll make coffee. This is clearly going to take a while." The look of confusion that flickered across Jessica's face was the first crack in her armor. She had expected tears, screaming, or a slammed door. She had not expected an invitation to coffee. I suppose I should explain how I got here. To this moment, standing in my kitchen at 5:15 in the morning, making coffee for my cheating husband, his boss, and his best friend who was apparently also involved in whatever scheme was unfolding. My name is Sarah Chen. I'm 38 years old. I'm a senior financial analyst at Caldwell & Associates, one of Seattle's most respected hedge funds. I make $450,000 a year, not counting bonuses. I married Marcus 12 years ago when we were both hungry and ambitious and saw the world as something to conquer together. We never had children. That was a mutual choice, made after long conversations about what we wanted our lives to look like. Marcus wanted to build something significant in the tech world. I wanted to become a managing director before I turned 40. We were partners in the truest sense. Or so I thought. The first sign that something was wrong came 2 months ago, right after Marcus's company, Velocity Systems, closed their Series B funding round. $30 million. Marcus came home that night drunk on champagne and possibility, talking about how this was just the beginning, how Jessica had promised him that if they hit their growth targets, he would be VP of sales when they went for Series C. He would finally be making the kind of money that matched his ambition. I was happy for him, genuinely happy. I had supported his decision to leave a stable job at Amazon to join a startup. I had been the one with the steady income while he took that risk. His success was my success. That's what partnership meant. But something shifted after that night. Marcus started working later. He started traveling more. His phone, which had always been casually accessible, suddenly had a new passcode. He became vague about his schedule. When I asked questions, he said I was being controlling, that I didn't understand the pressure he was under, that building a company required sacrifices. I'm a financial analyst. My entire career is built on seeing patterns in data that other people miss. So I started collecting data. I noticed that Marcus's late nights at the office coincided with evenings when Jessica posted on LinkedIn about being in Seattle. I noticed that his business trips to San Francisco matched Jessica's travel schedule. I noticed that he started dressing differently, spending more on clothes, wearing cologne that I had never bought him. Most tellingly, I noticed the money. Marcus's company had given him stock options as part of his compensation package. Those options were valuable, especially now that they had Series B funding. But Marcus had also taken out a personal loan 3 weeks ago. $50,000. I only knew because I still had access to our joint account statements, and the monthly payment had started showing up. When I asked him about it, he said it was for a business opportunity and that I wouldn't understand. That was when I hired a private investigator. Her name was Angela Torres. She was recommended by one of my colleagues who had gone through a divorce. Angela was professional, discreet, and expensive. She was worth every penny. The first report came back after 2 weeks. Marcus was having an affair with Jessica Reeves. They met at a condo in downtown Seattle that was owned by one of Velocity Systems' board members. They were careful, but not careful enough. Angela had photographs, timestamps, hotel receipts from their San Francisco trips. But Angela told me something else, something that made me ask her to dig deeper. This has a pattern to it, she said. The way they operate, the specific venues they choose, the timing around business events. This feels practiced. So I paid Angela to investigate Jessica's history. What she found made my blood run cold, though my face remained completely calm as I read the report. Jessica Reeves had a pattern. This was her 4th company as CEO. At each previous company, she had systematically pursued affairs with married male executives in key positions. The affairs always intensified around major funding rounds or strategic decisions. The men always ended up divorced. And Jessica always ended up with more power, more control, more board seats. At her previous company, a fintech startup in San Francisco, she had targeted 3 married executives simultaneously over the course of 18 months. One was the CFO. One was the CTO. One was the VP of Business Development. All 3 got divorced. All 3 remained loyal to Jessica, voting with her on every board decision. Jessica ended up as chairman of the board in addition to CEO. Then she sold the company for $80 million, walked away with $15 million personally, and left all 3 men with nothing but their professional reputations in tatters and their equity vaporized by the terms of the sale. But here's what was most chilling. The wives had tried to warn people. 2 of them had gone to the board. One had hired a lawyer and threatened a lawsuit. Nothing had happened. The company had closed ranks around Jessica. The women were dismissed as bitter, vindictive, unable to accept that their marriages had simply failed. Angela's report included contact information for all 3 women. I reached out to them. We had a conference call that lasted 4 hours. They told me everything. The same patterns. The same text messages at odd hours. The same gaslighting when the wives raised concerns. The same corporate structure that protected Jessica and isolated the wives. One of the women, Amanda Pierce, said something that stayed with me. She doesn't do this for the relationships. She does it for control. The affairs are just tools. She's building a network of men who are financially and emotionally dependent on her. Men who will vote the way she tells them to vote, men who will protect her because she knows their secrets. That's when I understood. This wasn't about Marcus choosing another woman. This was about Jessica building a power structure. And Marcus was just a chess piece. So was David. Which brought me to the David problem. Angela's surveillance had caught David meeting Jessica as well. Different locations, different times, but the same pattern. David was married to Emma, a woman I genuinely liked. Emma was pregnant. Emma deserved to know. I called Emma 2 weeks ago. We met for coffee. I showed her everything, photographs, hotel receipts, the timeline. I expected shock, tears, anger. Instead, Emma went very still and very quiet. I thought it was work stress, she said finally. He's been so distant. So guilty about something. I thought maybe he was having doubts about the baby, about being a father. She looked at me, her eyes dry but haunted. Is your husband involved too? Yes. Do you have a plan? That's when I knew I had an ally. Emma wasn't going to fall apart. Emma was going to fight. We spent the next 2 weeks planning. Emma talked to a divorce attorney. I consulted with a corporate lawyer who specialized in executive misconduct. We gathered more evidence. We built a case that was about more than just infidelity. We built a case about corporate fraud, about breach of fiduciary duty, about a CEO who was using sexual relationships to manipulate voting control and make decisions that benefited her at the expense of shareholders. And then I discovered the embezzlement. I'm a forensic financial analyst by training. I know how to read a balance sheet. I know what expense patterns should look like. So when Emma managed to get me access to David's company laptop, under the guise of needing to print some documents, I spent 6 hours going through everything I could find. Jessica had been siphoning money from the company for the past 18 months. Small amounts at first, hidden in consulting fees and professional services charges. Larger amounts more recently, disguised as business development expenses. Over $1 million total. She was using the affairs as a distraction, keeping the executives emotionally compromised and focused on hiding their relationships while she quietly stole from the company that was about to close a $50 million Series C round. That's when I called the conference room meeting for 9 a.m. That's when I sent the text that brought Jessica, Marcus, and David to my door at 5 in the morning. Now they were sitting in my living room, drinking the coffee I had made, looking at me like I was a problem to be managed. Jessica spoke first. She had recovered her composure. "Sarah, I think you're understandably emotional right now. Marcus has explained to me that your marriage has been struggling. Sometimes these things happen. But there's no need to make this into something bigger than it is. Marcus and I have a professional relationship that sometimes crosses personal boundaries. But that's between consenting adults." I let her finish. I even smiled. "Jessica, do you know what I do for a living?" She blinked. Marcus said something about finance. "I'm a senior forensic financial analyst at Caldwell Associates. We specialize in corporate fraud investigations for institutional investors and federal regulators." I let that sink in. "I've spent the last 2 weeks analyzing your company's financial statements, expense reports, and vendor contracts. Would you like to know what I found?" The color drained from Jessica's face. Marcus looked confused. David looked sick. I opened my laptop and turned it so they could see the screen. This is a spreadsheet showing unusual expense patterns at Velocity Systems over the past 18 months. These charges, which are categorized as consulting fees and business development expenses, don't correspond to any actual vendor relationships or deliverables. They do, however, correspond to transfers into a personal LLC that you created in Delaware 14 months ago. Jessica's voice was ice. "You have no right to access confidential company information." I didn't access anything. David's wife Emma is a co-founder's spouse with legitimate reasons to see financial documents related to her family's equity stake. She was kind enough to share them with me after I explained that her husband was being manipulated by someone who had done this before. I clicked to the next slide. "These are documents from your previous 3 companies, where you exhibited the same pattern. Systematic affairs with married male executives. Embezzlement disguised as business expenses. Sale of the companies at crucial moments that left your affair partners with nothing while you walked away with millions." I looked at Marcus. "Did she promise you a VP position if you helped her push through the Series C raise at a specific valuation? Did she explain that she needed your vote on the board, your support with other executives, your willingness to hit certain numbers even if it meant creative accounting?" Marcus's silence was answer enough. I turned to David. "Did she tell you that Marcus was getting special treatment? Did she make you feel like you needed to compete with your best friend for her approval? Did she promise you that if you played along, you would be CTO when the company scaled?" David's voice cracked. "She said if I didn't help her, she would tell Emma that I had been embezzling, that she had evidence I had been stealing from the company. She said Emma would lose everything. The baby would grow up with a father in prison. You were being blackmailed." It wasn't a question. David nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I made one mistake. One time, when I was drunk at a company event. She recorded everything. She said if I didn't keep seeing her, keep voting the way she wanted, she would destroy me." Jessica stood up. "This is insane. You're both insane. Whatever you think you know, whatever you think you have, it means nothing. I have lawyers. I have board members who trust me. You're just 2 bitter wives who can't accept that marriages end." "Sit down," I said quietly. "I'm not finished." Something in my voice made her pause. Maybe it was the same tone I used when presenting findings to federal prosecutors. Maybe it was the absolute certainty in my eyes. She sat. "I've been in contact with Amanda Pierce, Melissa Zhao, and Jennifer Klein. Those are the names of the wives from your previous companies. They're willing to testify about your pattern of behavior. They're willing to join a civil suit. More importantly, they're willing to talk to the SEC about your history of embezzlement from companies during fundraising rounds." I clicked to the next slide. This is an email I received yesterday from Amanda. She hired a forensic accountant to review the records from your previous company. He found the same pattern of fraudulent expenses. She's filed a formal complaint with the SEC. They're opening an investigation. Jessica's lawyer mask was cracking. You can't prove any of this. I don't have to. I just have to present enough evidence to make the Series C investors very nervous. Your company is supposed to close a $50 million funding round next week. How do you think those investors will react when they learn their CEO is under investigation for embezzlement? When they learn she has a pattern of sexually manipulating executives and creating hostile work environments? When they learn there are 3 previous victims willing to go on record? The room was completely silent except for David's quiet crying. I looked at Marcus. I filed for divorce yesterday. You'll be served papers tomorrow. I'm asking for a clean split. I keep my assets. You keep yours, no alimony either way. I'm being generous because despite everything, we did build something together once. Don't fight me on this. Then I looked at Jessica. You have a choice. You can resign from Velocity Systems today, citing personal reasons. You can repay every dollar you embezzled, with interest. You can sign a statement acknowledging your pattern of behavior and agreeing never to hold a C-suite position again. Or I can go to your board tomorrow at 9 a.m. with everything I have, and you can try to explain why 3 previous wives are lying about you, why the SEC is investigating you, and why your expenses don't match any actual business activity. If I resign, the company will fall apart. The Series C will collapse. No, it won't. David will step up as interim CEO. He's the technical co-founder. Investors will understand a leadership transition, especially when they learn it's because the previous CEO was engaging in illegal activity. You've been useful to this company, I'll grant you that. But you're not irreplaceable. No one is. Jessica stood up again. This time I didn't stop her. She looked at Marcus, then at David. You're both pathetic. You deserve each other. She walked to the door, then turned back. This isn't over, Sarah. You think you're so smart, but you have no idea how many powerful people I know, how many favors I can call in. You just made an enemy you can't afford. I have documentation of everything you just said, including that implicit threat. I'd be very careful about your next moves, Jessica. I'm not your previous victims. I have resources. I have evidence. And I'm not afraid of you. She left. The door closing behind her sounded like the period at the end of a sentence. Marcus finally spoke. Sarah, I never meant for this to happen. She was so charismatic, so compelling. She made me feel like I could be someone important, someone who mattered. She said you were holding me back, that you were too focused on your own career to support mine. Stop. I held up my hand. I don't want to hear justifications. You made a choice, Marcus. Multiple choices. Over months. You chose to believe her over me. You chose to hide things from me. You chose to take a loan without telling me. You chose to help her manipulate voting control. Those were your decisions. Can we try to fix this? Can we go to counseling? No. Because here's what you don't understand, Marcus. This isn't about the affair. If you had come to me 6 months ago and said you were unhappy, that you wanted something different, that you had feelings for someone else, we could have had a conversation. It would have been painful. But it would have been honest. Instead, you let yourself become a tool in someone else's scheme. You let her use you to commit corporate fraud. You put your best friend's pregnant wife at risk. You threw away everything we built for the promise of a promotion and the validation of a woman who saw you as nothing but a means to an end. I stood up. The papers will be delivered tomorrow. Sign them. Move on. Find someone who makes you feel important. But do it honestly next time. David was still sitting on the couch, his face in his hands. Does Emma know? Yes. She's known for 2 weeks. She's been staying with her sister while she decided what to do. But David, your situation is different from Marcus's. You were being blackmailed. You were coerced. That doesn't erase what happened, but it's context. If you want to save your marriage, you need to tell Emma everything. You need to be completely honest with her. You need to show her that you're willing to do whatever it takes to make this right. And then you need to give her space to decide. Will she ever forgive me? I don't know. But I know she loves you. And I know she wants your daughter to have a father. So you have a chance. Don't waste it. The board meeting happened 3 days later, not at 9 a.m. in a conference room, but in an emergency session called by David and 2 other board members who Emma and I had quietly approached with our evidence. Jessica didn't resign. She was terminated for cause. The company recovered the embezzled funds from her personal accounts. The Series C raise was delayed by 6 weeks but eventually closed at the intended valuation. David became CEO. Marcus stepped down from the board and took a position at a different startup, one where he would have to rebuild his reputation from scratch. The divorce was finalized in 4 months. It was civil, even friendly at the end. Marcus apologized, genuinely I think. He told me he had started therapy. He told me he understood what he had done wrong. I told him I forgave him, and I meant it, not because what he did was okay, but because holding on to anger wasn't serving me anymore. Emma decided to stay with David. They went to couples counseling. She said it was the hardest thing she had ever done, learning to trust him again. But when their daughter was born 2 months after Jessica's termination, David was in the delivery room, and Emma sent me a photo of the 3 of them. The caption read, "Thank you for giving us a chance. I sold the house Marcus and I had shared and bought a downtown loft with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound. I was promoted to managing director 6 months after the divorce was final. I started dating again, carefully, thoughtfully, looking for someone who valued honesty above ambition. And I started consulting. Amanda, Melissa, and Jennifer had planted a seed. There were other women out there, women dealing with versions of what we had dealt with. Women who needed to understand that corporate affairs weren't just personal betrayals but often systematic schemes. I started a side business helping wives navigate the intersection of infidelity and corporate fraud. I trained other forensic analysts to spot the patterns. I wrote a white paper that was picked up by Harvard Business Review. The $50 million Pattern: How Executive Affairs Mask Corporate Fraud. Jessica disappeared from the Seattle tech scene. Last I heard, she was facing civil suits from all 3 previous companies and ongoing SEC investigations. The criminal charges were still pending. Marcus told me, in one of our final conversations before we stopped communicating entirely, that she had reached out to him, trying to rekindle their relationship. He had blocked her number. I ran into David and Emma at a coffee shop 6 months after everything ended. Their daughter was beautiful, alert, with David's eyes. We talked for a few minutes, carefully, like people who shared a history they were still processing. Emma said something as they were leaving that I think about often. "You saved our family, Sarah. Not just by exposing Jessica, but by showing me that strength doesn't have to look like anger. It can look like clarity, like knowing your worth and refusing to accept less than you deserve." I think about that night at 4:47 a.m. often. The moment I saw that text. The moment I chose not to scream or cry or break down. The moment I chose to document, to plan, to build a case. Some people might call that cold. Some might say I should have been more emotional, more visibly hurt. But here's what I learned. Revenge isn't about fire. It's about precision. It's about understanding the system, finding the leverage points, and applying pressure exactly where it will matter most. It's about protecting not just yourself but the people who come after you. Jessica texted me once, months later, from a new number I didn't recognize. "You destroyed my life." I replied with 5 words, the same number she had used to try to destroy mine. "No. You destroyed your own." Then I blocked the number and went back to my life, my real life, the one I was building on foundations of truth rather than manipulation. The one where I woke up every morning in my loft overlooking the water and felt grateful for the clarity that had come from that terrible night. Some people say you should never go to bed angry. I say sometimes anger, properly channeled, properly documented, properly deployed, is the most rational response to betrayal. And sometimes 4:47 in the morning is exactly when you find out who you really are. I found out I was someone who doesn't accept being written out of her own story. Someone who turns pain into strategy. Someone who protects others while protecting herself. And that, more than any revenge, more than any divorce settlement, more than any professional success, was the real victory.